Well, hello xenographers everywhere and welcome to another episode. I think one of the things that's happening as film becomes an older and older technology is that the skills in developing and printing are gradually being lost. While quality printing and developing houses do still exist, some feature films are still shot on film, the skills are still there. Certainly in the high street outlets, I've found that the quality isn't always what you'd expect, and certainly not up to the standards of, say, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. I've noticed over the past 5 years or thereabouts that I'm getting more and more rolls back from developing and printing that have various faults on them, things like scratched negatives, negatives not washed or dried properly, prints not washed or dried properly, colour balance being quite widely out in prints. As somebody who still shoots the occasional roll of film, I needed to find a way around the problem. One partial solution is to ask the lab to only develop your negatives and not to make any prints. So that cuts out roughly half the room for error. And you can then take those negatives, scan them and print them up yourself. Another solution, which I think is probably better, all things considered, is to shoot only black and white film, develop it yourself and then scan it. So today we're going to look at 3 methods I've used to scan images made on film. So my first method of getting film images into digital form involves one of these, the good old scanner. Most of us have got one of these lying around somewhere. It's a nice quick way to scan, it's simple, it's easy, and it can give pretty reasonable results if you're not worried too much about resolution. So for this method we take our print, pop it on the glass, close the lid, and off we go. This method works reasonably well for larger prints, but if you're using smaller prints, well, you're at a disadvantage because, of course, there is a smaller area being scanned, so that means the final file will have less resolution. So as you can see, both of these prints look reasonable, but you can see a little bit of overexposure, a little bit of burnout on the lighter parts of the image. This image has fared rather better because it's a high resolution file, but it's still not ideal. So the next method of film scanning that I tried was using one of these. This is a dedicated film scanner. So what we do here then is we take our film carrier, open it up, place our piece of film inside. So there's our film mounted in the carrier. Switch on the machine and slide the film through until we find the image we want. Now we clearly want that in colour, so we push the appropriate button and there is our colour image. Press OK and scan. I've found this method to work reasonably well. It gives images with a reasonably good colour balance. It's very simple to use. These images were all made with this scanner and they're not bad at all, considering that this machine only cost me £20. The only problem is the maximum resolution of this machine is 5 megapixels. And while that's probably enough for most purposes, a 5 megapixel scan doesn't take advantage of the resolution of the film. 35mm film exceeds 5 megapixels in resolution. It's okay for use on the web, it's okay for the casual small print, but to get the most out of film images, I needed to try a different method entirely. So for my final method of scanning 35mm negatives to digital files, you're going to need a slide copier from the film days, an appropriate adapter, and a full-frame digital camera. So these slide duplicators used to be used quite a lot in the film days for copying slides and taking direct photographs of them. And the way they work is very simple. The light comes in at the front, the slide is mounted here, there are two clips that hold it in place. There is a focusing lens somewhere in the middle here, and the image then falls onto the film, or in this case the sensor, and you get an exact copy of your original image. They were made for all sorts of mounts. This one happens to be an OM mount, so here I'm using the OM to NEX adapter. Now, because these were made for use with 35mm cameras, you do need a full-frame digital camera to copy accurately. If you're using micro four thirds, you're only going to get the center section of your image, and if you're using APS-C, you'll get a slightly wider image, but it still won't cover the full negative image. I'm also using two pieces of glass. These were taken from two very cheap photo frames that I bought, and the idea is that these hold the negative absolutely flat so that there won't be any distortion in your image. So we'll switch on our camera. The negative to be scanned is now between the two plates of glass. Do be aware that the negative has to sit exactly aligned with the bottom of the glass. And what we do now is we pop in the negative into the slide duplicator. So you're likely to want to move the image around a little until you get the framing just right. We don't want any sprocket holes showing. And when everything's ready, just push the shutter button and take your shot. Of course, you'll end up with a negative image because what we're doing is photographing negatives. So once you've finished scanning your negatives and you've downloaded the images onto your computer, then using your editing software, simply reverse the image and you'll end up with a very, very high quality, high definition, high resolution scan of your original film negative. So there we are, 3 ways to scan your film images to digital files. 2 of them are good methods if you don't need particularly high resolution scans. Using a full frame camera and a slide copier, you can scan your film negatives to JPEG, you can scan them to RAW files, and you really do get some very, very high resolution files, and I've found them to be easily as good as a professional scan. Dust can be an enemy of this method, so it's good to have a blower and a brush handy just to clean the glass plates and keep the negatives clean. So that's it from me for now. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you found it useful. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time for some more Zenography. Thanks for watching.